Okay, we have come to the last update of my Goodreads project, and I have just about finished it. So I will say, the thing that is keeping me from saying that I completely finished it is the Keeper of the Lost Cities series, because it was such a long series. But I have made progress. I've made significant progress. I am on book 7. I'm about halfway through book 7, and I have the ebook of book 8. I still do not have Stellar Loon. That's going to be several weeks. I'm not going to save any of my wrap up or anything like that until I read Stellar Loon. That would take too long. So I'm going to do my wrap up without Stellar Loon. So speaking of Stellar Loon and the middle grades and children's list, this list has not changed for a couple weeks, and it obviously will not change. My guess is that it will probably be above, for sure be above Bastille versus the Evil Librarians, and somewhere probably between 4 and 6. I don't think it will make it above my 5-star reads, which are New From Here, Amari and the Great Game, and The Ogres and the Orphans. But it's gonna be pretty high, is my assumption, based on how things are flowing thus far. Now we come to the young adult fantasy list, and I believe there was just one more book left that I needed to read, and that was Cursed by Marissa Meyer. And in my blog, I talk about how I'd heard people discuss this book and say that it was long-winded and it took a while to get where it should have been going, and it could have been just a standalone. And when I read the first book, I didn't necessarily see that. I didn't mind the length of it. However, reading Cursed sort of made me retroactively think back on it and go, yeah, there was a lot in that first book that we didn't need to have, and then these 2 books could have been combined into one, and it could have been a standalone. I think there were some decent aspects to this, but it just dragged on so long. And for that reason, that's why I put it at number 12 below the Sunbearer Trials. If I were rating Gilded, the first in the series, I probably would have put it around 7 and 8, because I enjoyed Gilded just about the same as Foul Lady Fortune and This Woven Kingdom. Cursed, not so much. I see what she was trying to do there. She just got really wordy in these 2 books. So here we have my final rankings, which in my overall concluding video, I will compare this to Goodreads' list. My list is significantly different than Goodreads. Lastly, we come to the adult fantasy list, and this is the list where I made the most significant progress, and that's because I believe there were 5 books that, as of the last update, I had not read yet. I had 2 physical books and 3 audiobooks that I needed to read. Of those, the 2 physical books ended up being fairly disappointing. I'll talk about those next. We had the Atlas 6. I don't know what people liked with this book. I read this yesterday at the time of filming. I honestly do not see the appeal. And it split the narrative amongst all the 6 characters, plus an additional perspective here or there. None of the characters are particularly likable, and the things that they're being asked to do and the things that they're doing, not likable. I can sort of go along with an unlikable character, but when no one is particularly appealing, the book's really not going to appeal to me. I honestly do not see the point of it. I'm not compelled to pick up the sequel. And then we have the Golden Enclaves. This book, if I had left it with just The Last Graduate or A Deadly Education, books 2 and book 1 respectively in the series, it probably would have rated in the top half, probably between 8 and 11. It's this rapidly paced story that has the structure of the Scholomance to sort of contain the narrative. Well, in the Golden Enclaves, they're out of the Scholomance. And so that structure is no longer there to contain the narrative. And Elle, not only does she feel lost, like what is she going to do, because things did not work out how she expected them to at the end of The Last Graduate, she feels lost, and so does the narrative. And it wanders and meanders, and this is, I believe, 50 or so pages longer than either The Last Graduate or Deadly Education, and it didn't need that. So, because of the aimlessness of the plot, which is the thing that it had going for it, I had to rate it a whole lot lower. Then we get to the books that I listened to on audiobook. That was Kaikei, Ordinary Monsters, and The World We Make. So let's start with the lowest rated of those three. That is the one that I own physically, and that is Ordinary Monsters. Ordinary Monsters I will be holding on to, and I'm intrigued about. And I like the historical fantasy. I like the sort of X-Men type vibes in creating the school. You got a little bit of that, not a ton of it. What brought it down for me was the unexpected horrific parts of it. Some of the things that the magic does and the way that it's described were pretty visceral in their descriptions, and I just kind of was not expecting that. But that's what brought it down a little bit. And another thing, this book is so long, and it's the other book in here that didn't feel like it really had a main character. It had characters that it focused on, but no one person that you could say is the protagonist of the story. It felt like a lot of setup. So I'm gonna hold on to it. I'm gonna give it at least another book in the series to see where we go from here. It's kind of on the edge though. Next, highly rated, we have Kaikei. This one surprised me. This was the second of the two retellings, mythological retellings. Electra, I have some familiarity with. Kaikei, I have no familiarity with the source material. And so I want to say that up front, and I said that in my vlog. I do not follow the religion. I'm not familiar with the source material. And I know that people, Kaikei is part of their religion, part of their mythology, people that practice this religion currently. So I want to say that up front. For me, not having any connection to the original source material enabled me to go into it with more of an open mind and be able to treat it like a fantasy story. It is so utterly heartbreaking. The way that Vaishnavi Patel created such a beautiful, nuanced, fully faceted character in Kaikei, I wholeheartedly admired. I added it to my book of the month wish list for the add-ons that I'll be getting in future months. It really surprised me with how it developed and how things were told, and I really enjoyed it. You wouldn't think that at a 9, but I enjoyed a lot more of these books than I expected. And that leads us to the last of the 5 that I updated for this particular week, and that is The World We Make. If it had been The City We Became, I probably would have bumped it up to 3 or 4. I don't know if I would have put it above Legends and Lattes. I might have had it tied with Legends and Lattes, but I could see The City We Became being above Nettle and Bone. The World We Make, however, Jemison's world sort of expands monumentally in this, and it loses a little bit of the tightly controlled focus of the plot that you had in The City We Became. But my experience reading that while in New York City cannot be beaten. To read a significant chunk of the book while on my run in Central Park, yes, audiobooks count as reading, but to read a significant chunk of the book and to finish the book while on my run in Central Park, that experience cannot be beaten. And of course, I picked up a physical copy at the Strand in New York City. How could I not pick it up there in New York City? So that's why it rates so highly. And all of the books 1 through 7 were 5 stars for me. I've read a lot of really good adult fantasy this year. I'm gonna keep myself focused because I've got thoughts about my reading this year, but that's for my stats video, not for my Goodreads project video. It is very clear that my rankings for this are a whole lot different than Goodreads rankings for this list. So it'll be interesting to compare these two. Thanks so much for watching. I hope to see you in the next one.